I want to start with something I've never said out loud on this channel before. For a long time, I thought I was bad with money. Not reckless bad, not buying boats bad, just quietly, persistently, frustratingly unable to hold on to it in the way I kept telling myself I would. Every January, I'd set an intention. This is the year I actually save. And by March, the savings account looked exactly like it did in December, except maybe slightly worse. And here's what I did with that, because I think a lot of you will recognize this. I told myself it was a discipline problem. I told myself I needed more willpower. I told myself that if I just wanted it badly enough, if I tracked my spending better, if I set more specific goals, the saving would finally happen. I bought a nicer budgeting journal. I downloaded another app. I read articles about how to build the habit. None of it worked, not consistently, not in the lasting way I needed it to. It took me longer than I'd like to admit to understand why. And when I finally did, it reframed not just my savings habits, but my entire relationship with money in a way that no budgeting app ever touched. The problem was never discipline. It was never willpower. It was never even the amount I was earning. It was how my brain was wired to relate to money under pressure, and how everything about the modern financial environment exploits that wiring in ways that are specifically designed to look like your personal failure. Today, I want to walk through this with you, not lecture you about it, not hand you a 7-step savings framework that you're going to try for 2 weeks and abandon. I want to sit with the actual mechanics of why saving is genuinely hard, the psychological, the behavioral, the structural reasons, and then talk honestly about what actually moves the needle when willpower alone has already proven it won't. Because I think the reason most people can't save consistently isn't what they think it is, and that gap between the assumed problem and the real one is exactly where all the failed attempts live. Hey, I'm Alice from Money Blueprint. Let's get into this, and let's actually be honest about it. So here's the question I want you to hold throughout this whole conversation. What if saving is hard for you, not because of something wrong with you, but because of something your brain is doing exactly right in response to its environment? Because that reframe changes everything about how you address it. Start with the neuroscience, because this isn't abstract. Your brain has a feature, not a bug, a feature called present bias. It's the tendency to assign significantly higher value to immediate rewards than to future rewards, even when the future reward is objectively larger. Researchers have measured this, and it's not subtle. Studies consistently show that people will choose $100 today over $120 in a month, even when they'd never make that trade if both options were future tense. The brain values now on a completely different scale than later. This is a survival mechanism that served us extraordinarily well for most of human history. If you were a hunter-gatherer, optimizing for immediate resources over hypothetical future ones was correct. The future was genuinely uncertain. The animal in front of you was real and available. Taking it now was the right call. We no longer live in that environment, but our brains haven't updated the firmware. So when you're deciding whether to transfer $300 to a savings account this Friday or use it on something that would improve your weekend right now, your brain isn't being irrational. It's doing exactly what it was built to do. It's choosing the certain, immediate, tangible thing over the uncertain, distant, abstract thing. And saving is about as uncertain, distant, and abstract as a reward gets. You're giving up something real today for something that will matter in an unspecified future situation that may or may not look like you're imagining it will. That is an extraordinarily difficult trade for a brain wired the way human brains are wired. Knowing this doesn't make you immune to it, but it does change the frame from "why can't I be more disciplined" to "how do I work with this instead of against it?" which is a completely different question with completely different answers. But here's where it gets more interesting, because present bias is just the first layer. The second layer is something researchers call the scarcity mindset, and the work on this changed how I think about saving more than almost anything else I've encountered. Sendel Mullainathan and Eldar Shafir,
an economist and a psychologist, published research showing that experiencing financial scarcity doesn't just create stress, it measurably reduces cognitive bandwidth. When your brain is occupied with financial worry, running calculations, tracking what's coming in and going out, solving money problems in the background, it literally has less capacity available for everything else, including making good financial decisions. They called this bandwidth tax, and the cruel irony is that the people who most need to make careful, strategic financial decisions are often the people operating with the least cognitive capacity to do so, precisely because financial stress is consuming the bandwidth they need to think clearly. This isn't a character flaw. This is documented neuroscience. Scarcity makes you worse at managing scarcity, which makes the scarcity worse, which reduces your capacity to manage it further. The spiral has a mechanism. It's not random. And this is why the standard advice, just spend less, just be more intentional, just track every dollar, can backfire badly for people under real financial pressure. You're being asked to do more complex cognitive work with less cognitive capacity. It's like telling someone who's exhausted to try harder at sleeping. So what actually helps?
The answer that consistently emerges from behavioral research is make the good decision once, in advance, so you don't have to make it again under pressure. This is the whole logic behind automatic savings, and I don't mean this as a casual tip. I mean this as the primary structural solution to a brain that has present bias and limited bandwidth under financial stress. When money moves automatically from your account to a savings account on payday, before you see it, before you have the opportunity to decide what to do with it, before Friday night presents any competing alternative, you've bypassed the decision entirely. Your present biased brain never gets the choice. The future you already made it. The research on this is not small. The introduction of automatic enrollment in 401k plans in the US, where employees are opted in by default rather than having to opt in themselves, increased participation rates from around 49% to over 86% in the studies that measured it. Same people, same salaries, same options. The only thing that changed was whether the decision required action to participate or action to opt out. That difference in participation rate from 49 to 86% is the size of the behavioral gap between requires willpower and designed to work without it. Your savings account setup should require no willpower to maintain. It should run without you. The moment you have to decide week after week whether to transfer money, you're fighting your own neurobiology with raw effort, which is the least efficient possible approach. But there's a third layer that I think is the most underexplored, and it's the one that most personal finance content politely sidesteps because it's uncomfortable: identity. What most savings advice completely misses is that you will not consistently do things that contradict how you see yourself. Not because you're weak, because identity is one of the most powerful behavioral forces in human psychology, and it runs mostly below the level of conscious decision-making. Here's what I mean. If you've told yourself or been told explicitly or implicitly that you're not someone who's good with money, that identity shapes every financial decision you make, not through conscious thought, through the quiet filter that's always running in the background. Would someone like me do this? And if someone like you doesn't save consistently, then every time you don't save, you're not failing, you're just being who you are. The behavior is consistent with your identity, which means there's no cognitive dissonance, no motivation to change. The identity is protecting itself. James Clear documented this in the context of habit formation, and it applies directly to financial behavior. People who identify as savers, even people who adopted that identity recently through deliberate effort, behave differently around money than people who see saving as something they're supposed to do, but doesn't really feel like them. The practical question this raises isn't motivational, it's diagnostic. What does your internal story say about you and money? Not what you wish it said, what does it actually say when you're honest? Because that story is the operating system that every financial decision runs on, and until you notice it and begin to deliberately edit it, the behaviors it's generating will persist, regardless of what apps you download or goals you set. I'm not suggesting this is simple.
Identity doesn't change with a journal entry and a positive affirmation. It changes through accumulating evidence, small, consistent actions that begin to tell a different story about who you are. The first automatic transfer you set up and don't cancel. The first month you hit a savings target. The first time someone asks how you're doing with money and you have a real, honest, improving answer. Evidence repeated over time. But it starts with recognizing that the reason saving is hard isn't that you need more motivation, it's that you're running behavioral software that hasn't been updated, and you've been trying to fix software problems with willpower, which is like trying to debug code by wanting it to work harder.
Now, let me be specific about what actually changes the outcome, because I don't want this to stay abstract. Automation first. Move your savings on payday before anything else, without requiring a decision, even a small amount. The amount is less important than the structure. Increase it incrementally as you become comfortable. Friction second. Make spending marginally harder and saving marginally easier. Your savings account should be at a separate bank from your checking, with no linked debit card and no instant transfer. The 24-48-hour transfer delay is a feature. It turns impulsive spending decisions into deliberate ones. Most impulses don't survive a day. You're not locking money away. You're giving your future self a vote. Visibility third. The reason the scarcity mindset dominates is that financial stress lives in the background, unexamined, running calculations you're only half aware of. Bringing it into the open, seeing your actual numbers, naming your actual position is cognitively uncomfortable for about 20 minutes, and then becomes genuinely clarifying. The anxiety of not knowing is almost always worse than the anxiety of knowing. Knowing gives you something to work with. Identity fourth, and I keep this for last because it's the slowest to change and the most important to acknowledge. Start small, explicitly, as a saver. Not, I'm going to save $500 a month. I am someone who saves. Transfer $25. Call yourself a saver. Transfer $50 next time. Build the evidence. The goal is not the $25. The goal is the identity the $25 is building. Here's what I want to leave you with, and this is the thing I wish someone had said to me during those years when I thought my savings problem was a willpower problem. The system is not neutral. The consumer economy we live in has been deliberately engineered by people with significant resources to make spending feel easy, natural, rewarding, and identity consistent, and to make saving feel like deprivation, delay, and restraint. Every friction point between you and a purchase has been systematically removed. One-click checkout, saved card details, buy now, pay later, subscriptions that renew silently. Every mechanism designed to make money leave your account before you've consciously decided to let it go. You're not weak for finding this hard. You are a normal human brain operating in an environment specifically optimized to exploit your normal human brain. Recognizing that doesn't fix it by itself, but it removes the shame from the equation, and shame is one of the most reliable ways to stay stuck. When you believe the problem is you avoid looking at it. When you understand the problem is a design challenge, you can start engineering a different environment, one that works for you instead of against you. That's not a radical idea. It's just finally asking the right question. If any of this shifted something for you, if you recognized your own experience in any of it, I'd genuinely love for you to subscribe to Money Blueprint. This is what this channel is for, not telling you what to do, but helping you understand why you do what you do, so you can actually change it. And drop a comment below. Be honest. What's the story you've been telling yourself about why you can't save? I'm not asking to judge it, I'm asking because the answer is almost always more interesting and more solvable than it sounds. I'll see you in the next one.